Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend a warm welcome, dear participants, and welcome back, dear media representatives. And you've already attended our press conference before. We'd like to welcome you today's uh, industry balance for BVNS 2022. Today, industry has actually got the facts and figures for the national and international market. Afterwards, in two blocks, we'll see what actually was the part of the Congress Highlands on site in Nuremberg. And so today, this gives us an outlook of trade fair and Congress, also with regards to the content. We want to build a bridge to the summer, where hopefully we will meet all again from the 26th to the 29th of July in Nuremberg. And at this point, I'm very happy to share with you how many participants we can welcome you today. It's 1,695 guests in front of the screen, so welcome once again at this point. And allow me also to give you some technical information. The documents of the individual appointments can be found on our homepage, biofach.de and vivanach.de in the newsroom, and we will actually put this event afterwards online. And we make it available, and you can see the stream in the original language or translate it into German or into English. And for your questions during the sessions, please fall back on the chat function. We will try to answer all questions and the speakers of all the sessions. But please understand that in view of this huge number of participants, some of the questions need to be answered afterwards, as in the press conference, Daniela Brunner, the head of BIOFACH and BIOFACH, will tag us along and talk about the planning and the present situation. So thanks a lot, also from my part. So warm welcome to all of you on behalf of NürnbergMesse, of our trade fair duo, and also on behalf of all the other hosts here from the exhibition center in Nuremberg. We are very glad that our partner from BIOFACH and BIOFACH IFOAM Organicals International is international umbrella funder, and the Bund of ökologische Lebensmittelwirtschaft is the national fundraiser. And the two ideal carriers, Cosmos and Nature, actually design this day together with you. And I would like to thank all of you that you decided to participate in our sneak preview and insights BIOFACH Summer Edition 2021. I really do hope that today, from the two sessions, which are going to start in a minute, you will actually be able to take a lot of knowledge and information and inspiration as well, and thus get more feeling and look forward to the summer edition to exhibition duo here in Nuremberg at the Trade Fair Center. Now, presently at the exhibition center, we are in the room in Brussels, and when I hear this fantastic figure of participants, 1,600 industry stakeholders are actually taking part. So it's just imagine how wonderful it's going to be to see all of you in room Brussels face to face. Now, looking forward to our trade fair duo on site with digital extension elements in July. This means for all of us that natural cosmetics and organic food in all facets and with all senses can be experienced again, that we will be able to have personal networks, establish new business contacts, and we'll be able to extend and deepen existing ones. And the way I usually say, that's the salt in the soup of exhibition, that we get lots of inspiration and surprises and new discoveries during the 4-hour days on site in Nuremberg. The BIOFACH Congress will actually take place in parallel to the exhibition, so the focus being organic climate resilience. Basically, it is like ecological things. It's about making food production more sustainable, more resilient, more climate friendly. It's a very topical issue, which is very relevant for social and political affairs. Another topic is market research, information, market data, and figures, and further information. And you will get that after of words and get actually a deepening idea, trends and developments and politics and public change, not only on a national but also on an EU level, sustainable packaging solution, organic plant-based food, but also questions about regenerative and organic agriculture, looking at a holistic approach for the system. The BIOFACH Congress is divided into politics, science, and retailers, and also sustainability for the first time in 2022 as a forum. A new one will be agriculture. Presently, we expect 2,500 exhibitors who actually will present to you, the international public. So against the background of postponing our trade fair due from February to July, we are very glad to say that every day the inquiries from further companies interested in participating, so that we are really looking forward to presenting you in summer the varied and diversified and very extensive idea of organic industry. All of us here in the Messe in Nuremberg keep working with a lot of energy and efforts, trying our best to make this trade fair experience a successful one in summer and a safe one. So we want to offer you a framework concept with hygiene regulations. Not only have we prepared that, but we've already successfully practiced it and tested it. And of course, with the summer appointment, we would like to use the opportunity to get an outdoor, to integrate some outdoor feeling, and the planning is actually going on. I don't want to miss to invite you cordially to have a huge portion of knowledge, information, inspiration from the two following sessions and insights. And of course, then I would also like to look forward to welcoming you to get face-to-face from the 26th to the 29th of July in Nuremberg. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ms. Brunner. So I would like to pass on to the next session. Louise Lüdikold, for sure, is actually about to start the first program point being here in this Congress session, the world of organic agriculture, statistics and emerging trends, and dear Louise Lüdikold, so the CEO at IFOAM will present you the further speakers. Dear Louise, liebe Barbara, vielen Dank.
Language. It's an international session, and we will be launching the yearbook, The World of Organic Agriculture, the 23rd edition, and that's a great achievement. We will be listening today to the global statistics. We will also look which policies and regulations are behind that, or maybe the fundament of it. We will look how this works out at the European market, and also how the European goals will be achieved. And finally, we will be looking at the market trends. And for these important pieces of information, I'm really happy that we have the experts around our virtual table today who can really tell all of you, dear participants, the state of affairs. So we're happy to have here Dr. Helga Willer from the Research Institute Organic Agriculture in Switzerland, Jonna Hissa from IFOAM Organics International, policy expert, the director of IFOAM Organics Europe, Eduardo Cuoco, and dear Amajit Sahota from EcoVia, who always tells us the latest trends. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Helga Willer. But before you start, please accept our congratulations with the 23rd edition of this wonderful book. Helga, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louise. And a big thank you to BIOFACH that we can have this session here. And even though BIOFACH takes place only in the summer, because it's good statistical practice to have the data ready always at the same time so that it becomes predictable. And that's been possible, and it's great that we have such a big audience here. Yes, and I will show you the latest data, area and producer data on organics worldwide. As Louise already mentioned, we published this book. We've published it now for 23 times, and as usual, it contains tables and graphs and also insights into markets and how organic farming developed in the continents. And so it actually has quite a lot of information. And you can find it on our website, Organic World Net, or on statistics.feeble.org, and of course also on our Feeble website. We've been lucky that we've been funded for this activity for a very long time by the Swiss government, but also now by the Coop Sustainability Fund, by NürnbergMesse, who is the organizer of BIOFACH, and by IFOAM Organics International. And of course, a big thank you is due to all these data providers and authors who contribute to this work. And it's more than 200 people who we are in contact with. Yeah, that's our team. Claudia Meyer, Bernhard Schlatter from Feeble, and myself, and Jan Travnicek from Czech Organics has helped us this time to pull this book together. I wanted to say something about our data collection. It's good that we collect them from the countries usually, but then we have some institutions where that collect the data together. Like Eurostat has a lot of these European data, and from the Pacific we get them from the Pacific Community, and the Mediterranean data from the Mediterranean Organic Agriculture Network, and we've especially had a very, very good collaboration with CRO who is sending us the data from Latin America, and that's been a big improvement in the past 2 years. But the fact is still that we compile for many countries where there's no national collection system, that we compile them from the certifiers, the data. And we're really lucky that so many certifiers are joining this and sending us the data for their countries. But at the same time, we notice at the moment a trend that some countries where we used to have a national collection system, this seems to be falling apart. And then we in Switzerland compile the data from the international certifiers. And I really would like to call on all countries who haven't got a collection system yet to set up a national system, because that is always better than we compiling the data here in Europe. And I hear things are moving in Africa, so I look forward to that. But anyway, a big thank you to these certifiers who help us a lot with the data collection. Yeah, this is the world of organic. In 2020, we had growth of the area, of the producers, and of the market. I won't talk of the market because Amarjit Sahota will do so later, but you can find all these data in the book. Yeah, here are the countries with the largest organic farmland areas. It's still Australia, number one. Maybe you remember from the past. And it probably will take a while until somebody catches up to 35 million hectares. But Argentina and Uruguay, they have big farmland areas now. India had a big increase, so it's number 4 now. And the first, or the country in Europe with the highest organic farmland area is France, with 2.5 million hectares. Yeah, and here's the distribution. It's still, of course, half of the organic farmland is in Oceania, or mainly Australia, of course. And then Europe has about a quarter, and Latin America with more than 12%, a higher share than in the past. Yeah, and here are the countries that have more than 10% organic farmland, and we have 18 countries now worldwide. Most of these are in Europe, but not all. For instance, Sao Tome in Africa has 20%, which is really a lot more than the other African countries have. So, and Samoa has more than 10%, French Guiana. So there are some countries also outside Europe which have quite high shares. This is the growth of the organic farmland. You see that this year we had a stronger growth than in the past 4 years. We had 3 million hectares more, or 4.1% more. That was good. And looking by continent in the years, now we have this nice thing that we can make 2000, 2005, 10, 50, and 20, that we have had a very good constant growth in Europe in particular. And of course, the strong growth in Australia, but we know that these are mainly grazing areas. And in Asia, over these 20 years, you can see there has been consistent growth in all continents. Now, just some words on the producers. We counted 3.4 million organic producers, but I have to say that the number is probably higher, because many certifiers, they only send us the numbers of cooperatives or internal control systems, but not the individual producers that are attached to them. So it's probably incomplete, but even there we can say the number of producers grew by 7%, 7.6%, and the country with the largest number is India, and there it seems to be growing continually, more than 1 million organic producers, certified organic, third party certified. And on top of that, they have a lot of PGS certified producers. And then we have African countries like Ethiopia and Tanzania. And because of India, you can see in Asia is the largest part of the organic producers, 1.8 million. Yeah, and here one other thing which I think is worth mentioning, the European Union, they have been compiling through their systems data from certifiers on imports to the European Union. And on the left hand, you see on the top left a graph of the big importers in the European Union, and you see it's mainly Netherlands, because of course everything or a lot comes in through Netherlands before being distributed to other parts of Europe, European Union, and Germany is the second biggest. And on the bottom map, you can see that almost every country in the world delivers to the European Union, and that the countries, China is a big exporter, and as well as some Latin American countries. On the right, you can see that the organic imports to the European Union actually didn't grow so much. I mean, it seems to be stagnating. And looking at the what is imported, you can see that the organic bananas, for instance, and tropical fruit, that they grew a lot, and that Ecuador and Peru are now the number one exporting countries. It's all in volumes, in metric tons. Whereas Ukraine and China, who were the first on the number one countries last year, they have lost or have exported less, and that is mainly it seems it came less oilseeds and grains from these countries, which maybe shows that the European Union is also getting self-sufficient now, or more self-sufficient than in the past. But it's a speculation. We would need to look at this, and we want to continue working on this. The United States, they have similar data, so we will put them together. And so I think in the medium term, we'll get a very good overview of what's going on with exports and imports worldwide. Effect of COVID-19 on the organic sector. I mean, we saw that the organic markets grew fast. We'll hear more about that from Martin later. But we also saw that food service sales, restaurants, that dropped. We don't have much data on that, but for those countries where we have, we see it. Then we saw that in some countries, inspections were not possible anymore because of travel restrictions, and that in Pacific Islands, for instance, the number of certified farms partly dropped. Then we had the thing with the EU regulation that was postponed, or the implementation, because of the pandemic. And we had, of course, the supply constraints, and we had delivery and transport challenges, and of course, fairs and other events that were important for the organic sector were postponed or also cancelled. So this is actually here, I'm coming to the end of the presentation, some information on where you can find our data, our interactive database, the whole book. Can be found on Organic World Net or on statistics.feeble.org, and we also have a Twitter account where we inform regularly. Yes, and with this, I would like to close. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Helga, as always, for your enormous work on these statistics. I think it's impressive. It's impressive what all comes together in this book, first of all, but also to see how we can follow over time the change in organic agriculture and the growth of the sector. And this just doesn't happen because only consumers have a high demand. It only also happens because there's support from policy and regulations. And that's the next point that we're going to listen to. I would like to invite my colleague, Jonna Hisa to give us an insight in the developments on policies for organic and agroecological agriculture and regulations that help supporting this continuous growth of this sector globally. Jonna, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Louise. As you mentioned, my name is Jonna Hisa and I work at the Global Policy Team at IFOAM Organics International. And what I would like to contribute to today's discussion with is a presentation that is part of the book, which gives a worldwide overview of agroecology and organic farming policies and regulations in 2021. Just have some. Let's start with an overview of the topics. As you can see in this slide, I will start by giving some policy updates and then continue with regulation and standards. Before going in details, I would like to give a picture of the main topics. In 2021, we have seen an increasing number of governments around the world supporting the development of agroecological and organic agricultural policies, designing new initiatives and programs that help achieve their goals. On the other hand, there are more ambitious governments that have announced and launched policies aiming for a complete transition to organic agriculture. In terms of regulations, there are 76 countries with a fully implemented organic farming regulation. A total of 20 countries has organic regulations that are not fully implemented, and 13 are in the process of developing legislation. It is worth noting that this part on policies is a new addition to the book, and that we take this approach from now on. A broader look at the policies supporting organic provides readers with a much clearer picture of the state of the sector, rather than just looking at the legislation that regulates and controls its operations. The country I would like to start with is Burkina Faso. In 2021, the Ministry of Agriculture is leading the development of a national strategy for agroecology and an accompanying action plan. And in parallel, a new version of the national program is also underway. This program is planned to be the main federal strategy and action plan for sectoral policies, including agriculture and food security. Also, India experienced important development in terms of policies. The central government has in fact started to develop several programs to support the development of agroecology. In particular, Andhra Pradesh is known to be the first Indian state to launch a transition plan for 6 million farmers to adopt community-managed natural farming, which previously was called zero-budget farming. They have set a target of having 100% natural and chemical-free agriculture by 2030. Similarly, Himachal Pradesh, the neighboring state, has also set a target to convert all its farming households to natural farming. And by 2021, more than 160,000 farmers have declared to practice natural farming. Now let's turn to Madagascar. After the government enacted its first organic law in 2020, the country is now working to implement the law and put it into practice. Nicaragua also enacted a law on agroecology and organic production back in 2011, and 8 years later, FAO revised the law, and as a result, the policy has been now updated. In December 2020, the Philippines passed an amendment to the Organic Agricultural Act with a focus on participatory assurance systems. And Uganda is moving towards the implementation of the national organic farming policies that was enacted in 2019. This slide now provides an overview of governments that have been a bit more ambitious and have set a target of achieving 100% organic. For instance, to help achieve the goal of being the first country to fully convert to organic agriculture by 2035, Bhutan launched the National Organic Flagship Program to accelerate and stimulate the organic sector. Also, Karnali Province in Nepal has formed a high-level task force and guideline to promote organic agriculture in order to convert the province to organic. In the Huancavelica region of Peru, the local government also launched an initiative to improve access to support services for the development of organic agricultural production. And in Togo, the government issued a concept note affirming the national conversion of the agricultural sector to organic. Last but not least, Sri Lanka also announced last year its intention to gradually transition the country to organic agriculture. However, following an upheaval in the country due to the food crisis, the ban on the import of agricultural chemical input was lifted in November 2021. I will now provide an overview of regulation. The revised European Union Regulation 2018-848 entered into force on January 1st, 2022. And one of the main changes concerned the introduction of rules for smallholder growers group certification within the European Union. In New Zealand and Peru, regulations revisions are also ongoing. On the one hand, in New Zealand, the government is working towards the establishment of a regulatory framework which will be valid for both the import-export and the domestic market. And on the other hand, Peru is reviewing its requirements regarding PGS. In terms of standards and equivalence, regions going through significant revisions of equivalence agreements and standards include the US and the Eurasian Economic Union. Probably the most outstanding news is that the US has ended its recognition arrangement with the Indian Agricultural Authority. This means that Indian operators that want to export to the USA will need to be certified by a United States Department of Agriculture. Aside from this, the USDA National Organic Program is also discussing the strengthening of oversight and compliance of organic products. This will impact production, handling, marketing, as well as grower groups' requirements. And lastly, the Eurasian Economic Union have developed a roadmap for harmonizing organic standards in the region, and recommendation to member states will be drafted this year. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation, and thank you very much for the attention. Back to you, Louise.
Thanks a lot, Jonna. This is really, really interesting. And what came up for me, there's so much dynamics when it comes to policies, when it comes to regulations, where we also see how important it is that these policymakers learn from each other. And that's exactly what we do in IFOAM Organics International and in the regional bodies, making sure that these policies are being shared, either through a food policy forum for change or through other exchange programs that there are. You also focused already on the EU regulation that came into force at the beginning of this year. And we would like to hear from the next speaker, my colleague in Brussels, Eduardo Corco, on how the policies and regulations then also impact the market in Europe. So Eduardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you to BIOFACH for organizing this meeting. And also my big thanks to Helga and all the staff in FIBOL for putting together such a comprehensive collection of organic data. That's very important for the sector. It's very important to stimulate new people to convert to organic. It's overall important for the market development. So we are happy as Organic Europe, IFOAM Organics Europe, to contribute every year to this publication, providing a bit of the political context. And it's actually what I will try to do today, to present some data and trying to contextualize them into the EU policy landscape. And let me say it's a bit of a mission impossible because I have only 10 minutes to do this, so I try to do my best, and I hope you will enjoy. So I start immediately with the first slide about European farmland. This is a summary of European farmland, and then you have some specific graphics. A full data set of data is available in the book, so there you can find more details. I just wanted to highlight a few things to you. First of all, organic land is keeping growing in Europe. And although 2020 was a bit slower compared with the previous year, we had a growth of 3.7%, which account for 17 million hectares, representing 3.4% of the total land in Europe. Then when we go and look at the EU27, so the European Union, this percentage goes up to 9.2%. So we are talking about 15 million hectares, which are in the EU bloc. And half of these hectares are shared by 4 countries: Germany, Italy, Spain, and France. And I'm glad to say that France is the new champion among the European countries in terms of a larger organic agricultural area. So they passed over Spain, which is now at the 2nd place, and Italy, which is at the 3rd place. So as I said, France is really the leading country for agricultural land, while Italy is by far the country with the highest number of producers. We have more than 71,000 operators working in Italy, followed by France with about 53,000 and Spain with about 45,000. Then let's have a look at the market. I mean, it was a record year for the organic market in Europe and in EU. Both the data is about 40% increased compared to the year before. So we have a market that in the European continent has reached 52 billion euro, of which 45 billion euro in the EU27 bloc. This makes EU the 2nd largest market after the US and followed by China. So it's very leading role of the European Union in market developments for organic. Here the champion market-wise is Germany, with a market of about 15 billion euro, followed by France with 12.7 billion euro. And then there is Italy, which has almost a third of the French market, with around 4 billion euro of market. Interesting data is comes from Denmark. Denmark is really leading let's say, the overall share of food market with 13% of organic share on the national total food market. And another very interesting data is about Switzerland, where we have the highest per capita consumption, not only for Europe, not only for the EU, but really worldwide. Switzerland has about 420 euros spent per person every year in 2020 for organic products. And I wanted also to put the smaller graphs about the marketing channel, where we see that the specialized retailer have a kind of steady situation, while interesting is the development of general retailers, where organic sales are increasing very much in all the principal organic market. Yeah, so I think that's very interesting to understand a bit the dynamics of the organic market in Europe. Then Helga has already introduced you some figures about imports, so I will not dedicate too much time to that. But I think it's important to understand that there is kind of a stagnated situation, both in terms of total volume and in terms of products. So we can see that the kind of products imported to Europe are quite similar to 2019. There was little decrease in terms of volumes, about 1%, but not significant. What I was looking at were the gateways to the European market, to the EU market in particular, and we can see that in 2020 the share of volume of import in the Netherlands and Belgium has reduced, and let's say there are new gateways or improved gateways, increased gateways in Germany and France. So as I said, these are just part of the data. Once again, a little advertisement for the book. It's full of details. It's full of interesting data. So I really invite you to read the book to have more data and to understand a bit more about them. So my next slide, it's a comparison of growth between the market and land growth in the EU. So we're talking about EU 27, the 27 member states of Europe. Again, market increased massively, 15% market growth. Land, let me say, only increased by 5.3. I say only because it's a little bit lower than the previous years, compared also to the expectation we had of growth in 2020. But actually, let's say 2020 was a kind of a very special year for the humanity, let's say. And it's also very difficult to compare market growth with land growth. It's not like comparing apples with pears, what my colleagues from the Research Institute told me. And I think it's also important to know that we, let's say, making a bit of speculation, considering that the import did not increase, the surface did not increase substantially, but the market did increase. We believe that there is a very high number of organic products that before was sold as conventional that now finally have found their own market channel into organic. And also we believe that the land conversion was blocked in a way from the political context. As I said, 2020 was a very special year for organic farming, but not only for organic farming, was a special year because we all had the COVID pandemic giving uncertainties to our life and uncertainties also to political development. I mean, first of all, was mentioned that the new regulation, the 848/2018, is now finally in place from 1st of January 2022. But in 2020, many of the rules were still under discussion, giving a lot of uncertainties to those farmers who wanted to invest into organic farming. I mean, the rule were not very clear. So a lot of people wanted to wait until the rule were clear before starting a conversion. And the rule, as I said, were only clear on the 1st of January 2022 when we started the implementation. Another important political element in 2020 was the lack of security about the next common agriculture policy. I mean, the common agriculture policy in Europe is a very important tool that finances also the conversion of farmers towards organic. And in 2020, the discussion were still very intense. There was no clear indication of where we would have gone with the national with the national application of the common agriculture policy. This is actually still not 100% known because the national strategic plans of the common agriculture policy are still under discussion, and this discussion will only end up by 2022. But we expect that once there is clarity also about the future of the CAP, new investor will buy into organic and will come into organic. And then I think it's also important to mention that in the end of 2019, the European Union has announced the European Green Deal, so an European roadmap to zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. This European Green Deal touched a lot of sector, including food and farming. And in the very first presentation of the European Green Deal, organic was already very prominent. So there was already a lot of expectation on what organic could deliver to Europe in terms of sustainability, in terms of delivering into the Green Deal. And I mean, this brought expectation from the sector to understand what would have been, let's say, the consequence for organic. And I know that my time is going to an end, but I will need a couple of minutes to tell you that the Green Deal has been outlined into two strategies. One of those is the farm to fork strategy, a strategy which aims to reduce 50% the use of chemical pesticide, 20% the use of fertilizer, and to reduce by 50% the use of antibiotics. 3 reductionary objectives, and 1 ambitious objective to reach 25% of organic land under organic farming by 2030. And I wanted to mention the objective about organic farming in the end because I would like you to contextualize reaching 25% into a policy that wants to reduce fertilizer, antibiotics, and pesticide. So organic in Europe is not only now a farm production system, but it's a political tool to help policymakers to achieve the ambitious objective of the Green Deal and to make our food system more sustainable. So one quick slide about European Action Plan. 25th of March 2021, the European Commission published the European Action Plan. This is a direct consequence of the Farm to Fork. In the Farm to Fork, we say 25% organic land, we need an action plan to support it, and then we got the action plan. The action plan is built around 3 main axes. The first one is support the demand and to support let's say, consumer trust to buy organic products. In this axis, we have actions, among other, like enhanced budget for promotion policies to promote organic in Europe and in third country. We are talking about 80 million euro every year to finance project to raise awareness about organic in the EU27 and in third country. Another action I think interesting is an important job that the Commission wants to do with member states, regions, and cities to enhance organic into public procurement. So to really work to create a new market for organic products made by policymakers. Then going on the axis number 2, promotion of conversion, stimulating the conversion to organic. As I say, the common agricultural policy is expected to play an important role, but also this axis is targeting, for example, the creation of farm advisory services specific for organic to help organic farmers to convert and organic industry to convert to organic. The support of building up organic supply chain, so concrete support to create a new supply chain. Encouraging member states to support, for example, the implementation on novelties like the organic district, the biodistrict. So the European Union wants to bet on that. And I think it's also interesting, as we are talking about data, that axis number 2 of the Organic Action Plan also aim to build an EU market observatory to better analyze data. And we hope more data will be always available so that this presentation we are doing today can be even more rich. Axis number 3, it's really an axis that wants to position organic as a leading tool to make the overall food system in Europe more sustainable. Among others, I will mention 2 I think are really interesting. 2 action. One, that we will create in Europe a pilot network of climate positive organic holdings. This network is supposed to share best practices among organic farmers, but also among the overall agricultural community. And then a second one, which I think is also very progressive. Among all the overall budget for agriculture and food research, 30% of European money will go to support organic development with research projects for organic or research projects where organic can give a contribution to the overall sustainability of the food system. So, as I said, my time was short. I hope I offered you a good understanding of the political context and shown you some interesting data. I would like to conclude with this slide. This slide is about what we need to do to reach 25% organic land. As you can see, the way up is quite interesting. There is a lot of work to be done, but we believe that now with the action plan, with the good policy in place, we can reach this target of 25% organic land by 2030. So I leave you with a little advertise about 20 years of organic Europe. We will celebrate together with also the 50 years of Organic International and the 10 years of Organic Asia. And this is also an occasion for me to pre-announce the next European Organic Congress will be a special edition for our birthday on June 16 and 17. We will celebrate in Bordeaux. And I really wait all of you in person in Bordeaux to discuss the future of organic and taste some good French wine. So thank you very much. Thank you to our sponsor and thank you to all of you for your attention.
Eduardo, really great to put the European numbers in perspective of the whole policy context that's going on. Meanwhile, there are a couple of questions coming in. Thank you for doing so. Please keep on doing so. But I'm also suspecting that some of your questions will be answered by the next speaker. So I suggest that we first get our picture complete by listening to the next speaker, Amajit Sahoda from Egavia Intelligence, who will tell us about market trends. And I also would like to invite everybody to visit all our websites, feeble.org, IFOAM.bio, IFOAMorganicseurope.bio, and Egavia Intelligence. Go ahead, Amarjit. We are really interested to see the market trends.
Thank you for the introduction, Louise. And if I can have the screen, please, for the presentation. Okay. Now, what I would like to do is to give you an overview of the global organic food and drink market. I'm going to give you the latest data, and the good news is we've seen a record year for organic food sales. But I also want to talk about some of the trends. What are the trends which are affecting the market? A quick introduction to our company. We've been around for 20 years, formerly known as Organic Monitor. We do market research analysis. We've actually been tracking the organic foods market for 20 years. We do consulting, seminars, workshops, and we do a sustainable food summit. We're going to be hosting our European edition in Amsterdam in June. Now, the market data, the global market for organic food and drink, that expanded by 15% in 2020. And in terms of revenues, that was $17 billion growth, and that's a record year. The organic food and drink market has never increased by such a big growth in its history. So it's been a record year in 2020, and it's mainly because of the coronavirus pandemic. Before I go on to the next slide, I just want to talk about this growth over a 20-year period. So this market has grown from almost nothing in the 1990s to 18 billion in 2000, and it's now worth almost 130 billion US dollars. However, one caveat is that in the previous presentation, Helga showed that we've got organic farmland all over the world, but sales are still concentrated. Europe and North America represent 90% of sales, but that share has been going down. If you go to 2000, 3% of global sales were from other regions, now it's 10%. So the market is becoming global, but Europe and North America still represent the bulk of sales. Now, why did we see such record growth in 2020? It was because of the coronavirus pandemic. Because of the pandemic, people were becoming more concerned about their health. They wanted to build up their personal immunity, so they were buying more and more organic foods, not just organic foods, but health foods, supplements. We saw a big rise in sales for those type of products as consumers wanted to boost their immunity. Now, I haven't got time to cover the way the COVID pandemic is affecting the organic food market in terms of supply chains, in terms of policy, but also consumer behavior. But we've done a very good write-up in the book, The World of Organic Agriculture, about these trends, so I suggest you read them there. What I want to talk about is the challenges. So the good news is the organic food market has grown to a $129 billion industry. However, there's a lot of challenges on the horizon. On the left-hand side, it's competing products, conventional foods, which are priced lower than organic foods. You've got eco-labeled foods, and now plant-based foods. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. But also, there's a challenge from standards. The number of standards is increasing. We're seeing national regulations, national standards. We're seeing more and more private standards, and there's a lack of equivalency between them. As the previous speaker spoke about this, USA has entered a lot of equivalency agreements, but if you go to Asia, you go to Latin America, you go to Africa, there's more and more standards, but a lack of equivalency between them. Another challenge is fraud risks. This market is showing a very high growth. We saw 15% growth in 2020. The preliminary numbers for 2021 are very positive as well. A big challenge there is if demand is outpacing supply, there's more and more risk of fraud, where products may be mislabeled and sold as organic, but they're conventional. So that's a risk that the industry should be aware of. And the third one is supply chain. Sorry, not supply chain, but supply-demand imbalances. Now, Eduardo, in his presentation, he gave the slide for Europe, and he showed that over a certain period, the growth in organic farmland in Europe has increased 5.3%, but the market in Europe has grown 50%. Now, Europe has the second largest market for organic food and drink. The largest one is in North America. And this chart here shows the growth in organic food and drink sales between 2000 and 2019. we've seen a growth from 9 billion to 50 billion. But if you look in terms of the organic land area, that's hardly changed over the last 15 years. So what you're seeing is very high demand for organic foods, but a slow or hardly any increase in organic farmland. And this is causing a lot of imports to come into North America from different parts of the world. So the question there is, how are we going to meet this surge in demand if there's not enough farmland in North America and Europe, where most of the demand where most of the demand comes from? The next point I want to talk about is sustainability schemes and labels. So organic is the dominant eco-label, and it represents most sales of eco-labeled foods. But what's happened in the last 10, 15 years, we're seeing more and more different sustainability schemes and ethical labels being introduced. I don't want to cover this in a lot of detail right now, but this is having two consequences. The first consequence is at the production level. What we're seeing is more and more agricultural land is being certified by similar schemes. And this chart shows the increase in certified land area for 8 agricultural commodities. It's increased over 8-fold from 2.3 million hectares in 2008 to 19 million hectares in 2018. Now, this is a chart for 8 agricultural commodities, and globally for these commodities, 8% of agricultural land is now certified according to those schemes. However, organic represents just 1%. So 7% is for schemes like Rainforest Alliance, Root Certified, Fair Trade, 4C, etc., Global Gap. Now, the growth of organic in terms of certified land area is far less than these competing schemes. So at the production side, more and more producers are moving to competing schemes and not organic. And the second consequence of this is at the consumer level. What we're seeing is more and more products being marketed on ethical labels. On the right-hand side, you have a product which is called triple certified coffee. It's certified organic, it's certified fair trade, it's certified Rainforest Alliance, and shade grown. On the left-hand side, you have a chocolate, and it's certified by fair trade, non-GMO, and gluten-free, but it's not organic. And this is a big challenge because consumers want ethical products, health products, but we're seeing more and more products coming into the market which are marketed as ethical. They are certified by competing schemes, but they're not organic. The next point I want to talk about is plant-based foods. And in the food industry, plant-based is probably the fastest growing sector in the food industry at the moment. And consumers are moving to more and more alternatives to meat, dairy, and seafood, which are made from plant proteins. And I've just got a few examples of some of the products over here. And these products are not organic. However, if you look at the reasons why consumers are buying these products, they're buying them for health reasons, for animal welfare, and the environment. And then you can say concern for the antibiotics. So the factors for consumers to buy plant-based foods is almost identical for them to buy organic foods. And this is a chart here by Agence Bio. Health is the first reason for consumers to buy organic foods in France. Environmental impact, quality, animal health is number 6, and ethical reasons. So the reasons for consumers to buy plant-based foods are becoming the same as for them to buy organic foods. And the challenge there is, how can we keep organic distinct from these competing ethical labels, as well as this new area of plant-based foods? And we think the way forward is in terms of marketing. Now, globally, there's a big trend to reduce the environmental impact of food products, and there's a big backlash against single-use plastics. And what we're seeing is some of the pioneers they're moving to sell organic foods without packaging. Here in the UK, you've got Planet Organic, and they have a section in their stores called Unpackaged, where you can go in with your own containers, your own bags, and then you can fill them up and you pay for what you're buying as opposed to the packaged products. And this concept is also taking off in other parts of the world. We've seen this in Asia, Scoop Whole Foods Australia. They operate 6 stores in Singapore, and they sell all their products without any packaging. So you go in, you can buy a whole wide range of organic foods, you take in your own packaging, or you use some of their containers in their stores, and you pay for that. So the point there is, this organic food market has grown to a $129 billion market. If it's going to continue to grow to reach 150, 200 billion, which it will do, it needs to remain distinct from competing products, and it needs to be more creative in the way that these products are being marketed. And with that, I'm going to close.
Amajit, this is really, really interesting to put organic in the bigger context of sustainability standards, and also looking at the trends that there are in the organic market. We have time for one question only, and I think I would like to address that to both Helga Willer and Amajit Sahota. Excuse me. There's a question about out-of-home products and how that has developed over the last years. Do we have enough information about that, and can it be reflected in the statistics? And I see you nodding, Amajit, so maybe you go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify out-of-home products. Could you just clarify what you mean by that?
This is the question that we got, so I can only speak on behalf of the chat contribution.
I think Helga, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think what they mean is this restaurants, out of home eating, food service, catering, as we call it.
Statistics about
sorry.
that.
Okay. Now, food service. Okay. A few comments on that. Some countries like France, they have a regulation, I believe. The French government introduced a regulation many years ago that they would like more and more of their food service catering establishments to use organic ingredients. And I think it's the same in Denmark and Sweden and Scandinavian countries. So we are seeing more and more use of organic ingredients in the catering and food service sector. But we have not seen growth in this sector. If anything, this sector has slumped during the coronavirus pandemic. That's because restaurants, food service establishments, etc., apart from takeaways, a lot of them were closed during the emergency measures introduced. So during the pandemic, there's been a collapse in demand from the food service sector. But if you look at overall, there has been a big increase in demand from catering establishments, food service outlets, restaurants, cafes, etc.
Thanks a lot for addressing that question, and also for mentioning the excellent examples that there are indeed in the Scandinavian countries. We're coming to a close of our session because we also want to give time to our German partners to present their statistics and put that into context. Before we close, though, I would like to make everybody aware that these statistics and also the articles behind it are all available under organicworld.net. And I would like to also make reference to all the websites of all the organizations that are participating here: IFOAM.bio, IFOAMorganicseurope.bio, and Ecovia Intelligence. And finally, I would like to invite you to celebrate with us. As Eduardo earlier said, there's a lot to celebrate. We will turn 50 this year, IFOAM Organics Europe, 20 years IFOAM AZ 50, the BLW 20, IOAS 25. There's a lot to celebrate, which we would like to do with you together during the BIOFACH in July of this year. We all look forward to welcoming you there in person. And I would like to give back now to Barbara Böck from BIOFACH and NürnbergMesse.
Thanks a lot, Louise. Ludicol, at this point, we are looking forward to see all of those, to all these anniversaries, and we're looking forward to celebrating them together with you. Thanks a lot to all the speakers of this session. And then we'd like to come to the German Boris Joyce Movius. so for Joyce Movius is already in starting. I'm very happy that today we are going to have a deeper look into the German market, facts, figures, analysis. Dear Joyce, so the stage is yours. So thanks a lot, dear Barbara Böck, and also thanks a lot to the international colleagues for this depiction that was very interesting. So hello from Berlin, ladies and gentlemen. So it's wonderful that from all over the world you switched to this program, or you actually stayed here in front of the TV sets for our event. I'd like to extend a warm welcome for our statistics event, which otherwise every year you actually see at the BIOFACH and the Congress, which always said the German BIOFACH, tax, facts, figures, analysis. Now this 21 issue. Maybe this morning you've already had a look at Lanz or the various leaflets and materials. We see that more customers and farmers and producers actually decide in favor of organic food. They all actually transform everything with with the heart of the transformation, and this actually brings changes and transformation wherever needed to the farms, to the companies, to the nutrition of the people, of human beings. But let's dive into this because the experts are waiting on the panel in the next hour. We are going to learn a lot about information on the German market, the development in the land and in retail, what boomed particularly, and what the situation is in natural specialist trade in Germany. Before I present you the speakers and we get started, I would like to give you some information about how we proceed and the condition. We're starting with an input, so each topic, and afterwards the speakers will be glad to answer your questions about the understanding. After the entire input, we may have time for a final round in which we will take further questions. You may have heard from the colleagues, we are very happy to see that lots of spectators actually have switched in, so the interest is very high. So we won't be able to answer all the questions in the session. So we will do that afterwards, or please feel free to send us an email to presse.de or have a look at the more deepened information on the BIOFACH website or to the press folder of BIOFACH Trade Fair, where everything is actually summarized on the national and international level. One more information, this event will be made available real life. That means this event you can also actually recommend it and watch it, and this will be available as of this afternoon. So please ask your question. Please use the chat function. Please tell us who you are or for whom you report, and also to whom you would like to address your question. Now, that's it. If you have any technical problems, please send an email to info@presslive.de. And now let's get started. I'd like to present you the experts on our virtual panel in the order in which they're going to speak. So here we go. So the two of them are here. First of all, there's Diana Schad from the Agrarmarkt Informationsgesellschaft, AMI, and then hi Diana. And then there's Klaus Braun from Klaus Braun Communication Consulting. We will start with Diana Schad. She will have a look at the development of organic food in Germany. And don't forget, if you have any questions, just put them into the chat. Now, the floor is yours. Well, so warm welcome from my part as well. Here from Bonn, from the studio of the ME Agrarmarkt Informationsgesellschaft. So I would like into the facts and figures on the German organic market in 2021, and we get started with the most important chart we have today, which is the development of the organic market in 2021. This year with this huge growth, 2020. So looking back, we had 22% of growth altogether, and now this keeps going on in 2021 with a growth of 5.8%. This too is already something to add to this actually very high growth we had. We say this makes a total of 15.87 million euros in turnover, and that the food retail stores account for the biggest share of this growth. That means food retail actually grew by 9.1%. This year, especially the discounters actually grew much more. That was different from last year when the full assortment ones were the ones which actually increased as well. In the first 6 months, we see the other places, 7.4% of growth, so which also includes all the ones here, so the handcrafts, so bakeries, butchers, so actually weekly markets and retail trades and so on, and mail order shopping. They also increased, also not that dramatic as last year. And the one which was not able to reach that high level of growth was the natural food, which actually slightly decreased because just selling organic food alone is no longer enough. But Klaus Braun is going to talk about that in detail and explain. Now, once again, looking at the place where the shopping place is, what is really so exciting about it is that this only includes the fresh products. That's roughly 60% of the market. Where we see the discounters were the strongest ones. Looking at the entire market, that's no longer the one with the full range suppliers. We almost have almost 9% of growth. We can have to say that the food full range providers, smaller ones such as Edekas and Reves, that were included, that accounted for this crowd, and the big ones, the big consumer markets, these large spaces, had quite a difficult time. What is not included. So lots of dry products are handled. The drugstore markets are in between the discounters and the full range providers, and so they had a large growth. And of course, natural food branded is actually here with they have different data that come from the panel data. Don't want to overvaluate that, but the direct marketing also increased by 4.1%. These are the shops, actually the weekly markets or the farm markets, and the online trade is growing a lot. But here we need to say that in conventional area, so this has grown even more. We said the overall market actually has remained almost stable, but on the right hand we can see the orange bars, and we see that the online trade with 42% has shown considerable growth. Lots of companies actually increase dealing their food on an online basis. You see, that's something you shouldn't forget. And what is exciting as well over the year, the course of the year, we haven't actually shown that here. So this increase has actually declined. So we still have a very strong first quarter because so the comparative quarter of 2020 was not that much included, but still in all months we see a plus, the exception being October. That's the only month in which there was a decline. So over the years, we can see the change and the increase of the organic food share to preliminary 6.8%. We see the final figures of food retails at the statistical office. They have not been released and published, but we can see how things have developed and grown over the years. And there's a big jump, 2020. this leap, but things went on afterwards. Here, look at the products. And so we see the comparison of the expenses and the volumes purchased, and the classical products, meat and butter and milk, are the product groups which are ahead with the biggest growth. We can also see that the purchased quantities grew in similar relations. There was little increase in price. There was, but and especially in the second half, yes, there were price increases, but not yet in a way that this actually strongly impacted the expenses. It's exciting to see two products which had grown considerably last year. So these were pandemic hamster products. So that was the flour and oil. They just maintained the level. So this actually leveled off on this level. And with fruit and vegetables and fruit and meat and vegetables, they could have grown even more if the raw materials had been available, especially when it comes to meat. For the entire year, the demand exceeded the supply, and the animals available here at home, and which was taken from other countries. There's a similar depiction with different products. Looking at the entire market, you see on the right the growth on the entire market. There are two products which stand out. This is something, these plant-based drinks and meat substitute on the organic market. They are very important, but on the conventional market, this grew even more. So conventional companies actually introduced that. We know that with the meat substitute, with Beyond Meat and so on, and an increased number of trying to get local raw materials for meat and dairy substitutes with the oat rings. So soybean actually lost importance. Well, they're trying to do that with meat as well, but in conventional market, it is much easier to work with additives to reach the right consistency. And so in organic food, they're still in the development phase. And here too, when we talk about land development and the development of the market, so we also need the development in the processing that's still missing. And for the rest, we can see that the normal products, the classical products on the entire market declined in the entire after this year of pandemic, when any out-of-home food actually was eliminated and people cooked at home. In the second half of the year, this was realized in part, but the high growth of the year before could no longer be reached. Well, and this is the development of the organic food shares. There's the volume shares of the entire market. See the plant alternatives and the dairy and milk alternatives are actually very much ahead. But you can see in both products, the shares are declining. Of course, if the conventional market has grown more, so the organic share decreases. But still the list, they are actually leading the list, especially when it comes to the dairy alternatives, where a lot is actually made from actually oat and also from wheat, spelt, and the other ones, the classic things. The organic food share has increased a lot. Next, we're talking about the 17%, 17%, or flour is 15%, or milk 13%. Also oil, as I said, which actually has not grown, but it already has 10% of organic share. So we have increased a lot, and products that grew a lot, so meat and poultry, they still have a lower share. But anyway, 4.4% in meat 2-3 years ago, so the situation was different. That was around 2%. And here a lot has changed, especially when it comes to meat consumption. This goes on at a low level, but with huge steps. And then, so let's have a look at who buys that. How have these buyer groups developed? So these are figures from the GfK household panel. On the left, you can see the households and the way in which these households are distributed. And the second column shows how these households actually buy organic and fresh products. Just to give you an example, so families with kids, they account for 22.4% of the households, but they buy 34.1% of the organic fresh products. That means the expenses. They spend 34% of the expenses. They spend 34% on organic fresh products. That is different according to the groups. So classical products such as fresh and meat and poultry, that's strongest. The elder families without kids, they're the most important buyer groups for meat and poultry. So represented like this, these are expensive products. These are the ones, the population groups who have most of the income at their disposal, but families with kids, milk is twice as much, and so they buy organic food, twice as much organic milk than they have households. I'd like to point out the meat and dairy alternatives, and we can see that the young people, both the young singles and couples without kids and the families with kids, they buy above average plant alternatives in organic quality. This is the direction, the trend. This is something we have to keep in mind in this market development. These are products which will strongly develop over the next few years, because this is a trend which will no longer stop from developing. Now so this is actually the surcharges against the conventional product, they have not actually changed so much. But when you actually think of chicken, scallop and eggs, they went down as compared to the previous years. So it's no longer such a huge difference, such as mozzarella or minced beef. So the difference is really low, or actually for milk. So these are price products. So the consumers actually know what it costs, and the shops try to leave it with very low price or charges. And then let me continue to talk about prices. Prices this year will accompany us much more and will be a topic, because the producer prices will rise for lots of products, because there the costs rise as well. It's good because the farmers should get more money for pigs, for pork, for beef, for milk, but at the same time the costs are rising a lot in production. So all of them are happy about the higher supply prices, but very often they are eaten up by the cost increases, transport, energy, packaging, everywhere. And the problem is that the consumer prices, we can see that in the example of minced beef and the prices for cattle. These are two products which are very closely related. The two of them, the two prices have risen as well. So 1 kilo of minced meat costs €10.60 in the shop, but this does not occur as the producer prices rise between their processors. There's a slightly processed product, but they are products where you have to do much more to reach the final product. In between, there's a processor that has much higher raw material cost than 1 year ago. And in the end, this processor will have to invest much more energy and power and labor. And at the end, from retail, it gets just a little more. And this is a development which will accompany us, and we need to be careful to ensure that this processing stage doesn't actually get lost, doesn't lose ground, which is the case sometimes, especially when these are smaller companies with not so much capital in the background. And the same situation exists in grains. Below we can see the price development for root for wheat. We see there was not a lot of harvest, and so this is why all the other grain types became more expensive. At the same time, the consumer prices are more or less stable. In fact, with flour, there was an increase in prices, which we can see, but actually we are on the level in which we were in 2017 and 2016. So we just took it back, and this went down because more trade marks were actually in the stores, but they are going to become more expensive right now. Now cost increases. That's something which will accompany us in the entire line. And then let me talk about production. Production now, of course, is a very exciting figure after the first estimates of BÖLW from 2021. We have growth of land of 4.7%. As we can see, this has decreased more and more. So the change was in 2016, where almost 15% of growth of land occurred. So we actually changed a lot of green land and cows and dairy cows, but this has actually leveled off and went up at 1.78 million hectares. And here too, in international session and in the EU, we heard a lot about that. We need much more. If we want to reach the EU target of 25%, we need 9% of growth. And if we wish to reach the German target with a 30% share, we need at least 11 or even 12% of growth, because the area of the land is going to increase by 3 times as compared to the present situation. And this is something we can manage, but we can only manage if also the processing companies are accompanied or funded. If we don't do something for the others, but also in the steps in between. And this is where politicians are required to start acting. This is the distribution in Germany. We have a bit more than 50% of the space, which is Greenland. So this has not changed for years, but a lot of farmland has been added as well in this change. First of all, Greenland, and now we have much more farmland. And wheat is the most important culture. It used to be rye, and oat has really caught up. But as compared to the previous years, I'd like to show the development. You can really see that there is more farmland, and we can produce more now. We had some weather problems last year. I will show you the details about that. In pork, we can see a slight increase also. The demand was so high. And in eggs, there was really a push in 2021. And also in eggs, we already have a huge share. I think that 1.9 billion of organic eggs from organic production. And here actually we're a bit oversupplied, and that's where the harvest or the land and the grain harvest actually increased, but still we have not enough. We have clearly more spelt and oat. We see the quantities of the harvest. The orange bars inside show the changes against the 2020, and we had a tremendous increase in areas for inland for spelt and oat because these cultures were so scarce. Not a lot was paid for them. At the same time, we have a decrease of rye, which is only 4%, but the market is much more market. This is why we have clear price increases in all grain types, with the exception of spelt and oat, which are well available, but for the food, with actually barley and triticale and raw wheat, we don't have enough. And this actually, this is something which is really a problem for the breeders, especially when it comes to protein food, especially now that the new regulation has actually come into force with the 100% of organic feeding for grown-up pigs and poultry. Oh, that's a problem which we will continue to have in the future. Hopefully, with the new harvest, that's going to improve, but we would require more transformation and changes. And for the time being, so it's not that positive. I think I have to accelerate a bit. I still have some information about the Greenland and the dairy or the milk. Also here we have a moderate growth only in 2021, which is only 2.6% of growth. In the meantime, finally got the final figures, and here too, after this strong transformation wave in 17-18 with 19% of growth each, the dairy industry actually slowed down. Now they're coming up again, taking up new farms, new sites, but it's not an overboarding, not an exaggerated growth, but a very moderate growth. So that's different in France, where they have a huge growth in lands and a surplus of milk. But in beef, well, there's quite a leap because the cattle, actually, which came here, was slaughtered and came onto the market as meat. And as compared, these are the expenses for dairy products as compared. So to the 2% of 2.6% of growth, the growth rates are in dairy products are quite okay. Some of them are not that fine, but dairy drinks or durable milk is 90%. Is still very good. And last but not least, fruit and vegetables are very important products in the market. However, they undergo much more fluctuations and depend much more from the weather conditions than from the development of the land. In 21, we had a smaller apple harvest than 20, and also this was the case. This actually declining. It is true that vegetable, the 21 harvest actually of the inventory, vegetables, especially carrots, this was quite good. But anything which grew in summer, tomatoes and salads and so on, so actually they suffered from this rain. And this is the reason why I say, so we rather have this kind of fluctuations and not so much of continuous growth or decline. Here too we can need a bit more. And the potato harvest was a bit smaller, actually, so fewer sorting outs, and also due to the weather, so should not actually be sufficient until the new harvest can be taken, as it was the case in previous years. That's the situation at the German organic market. I think it took me a bit longer now to show you everything, but there are a couple of topics we will continue to have in the future. Change on the organic market is good, not from the conventional side, because there are these prices as well, but it's a good time. Everybody wishes to have more organic shares in a lot of areas. This is urgently required. So that's everything about the German market. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Diana, for this ride through this really interesting development of the organic industry gives us everything. So if you want to have a more political view at that, you can also have a look at how BÖLW commanded that from a political aspect. I don't want to delay things too much, and I would like to pass on to natural food retail trade, because there's no question to you. This is why we want to have a look at Mr. Klaus Braun. And now we cast an eye on a German phenomenon, which is the natural food retail. So Aldi's, all those actually places where you find 100% of organic food. Klaus, the stage is yours. Dear guests, please ask questions to Klaus Braun and also to Diana Schall in the chat. Well, also, hello everybody. And I'm going to try, right after Diana's remarks on the entire market, on the overall market, I'd like to share some information about the special partial market, as Joyce called it, consequential organic food suppliers in specialist retailers. Among the specialty retailers. So to start with everything, it could also be a kind of wrap-up, but it is supposed to show the direction of the natural specialist trade in the last year in various areas that got signals from the market that the previous years for that go on doing it because everything is okay and it's going to stay like that and it's going to be good in future, that actually got some cracks. And so the initial basis a couple of years ago was the following. Topics such as conscious nutrition, sustainability, they have increasingly become a dominant social need. This kind of organic movement, which started as a pioneer movement, actually was the pioneer for a long time and for decades benefited from this trend. In the beginning, exclusively, and over the last few decades, with individual deviations, but growth rates ranging from 5 to 10% were partly normal. So the business model selling organic products was really successful and still is, but exclusively no longer. The development in the past few years, some aspects the natural food industry, in the meantime, has actually lost its USP to sell organic food. An increasing number of companies outside the specialist trade take up this trend, which is no longer a trend any longer, but part of the normal life. And organic assortments and trademarks in the discounters and LEH are getting more and more successful. Diana actually supplied us with the examples of the previous year. There are new challenges for the dealers and marketing behavior, which for the companies which are actually influenced by the conventional way of dealing with that. Digital marketing for many in this industry is still a very strange field, an unknown field. Increasing turnover in the economic basis has been created. It doesn't come just by itself, and the financial funds and reserves are actually have been started to use. And another thing which actually could be seen in the development of the entire LEH and what was a drastic step, and what's particularly important was 2020, the year of pandemic. So in the organic food retail, we will talk about that as well. And the most recent constellation is something we're going to look at, such as market development and market significance of the organic specialist trade. So both the development has decreased and its importance in the context. Which means, so previously successful business models now have to be revised. And the decisive question from my point of view is, which new future USPs can such a distribution channel, such as the specialist trade, which is run by the owners, because the USPs that have been derived from previous experiences will increasingly taken over or actually overtaken. So the market volume of this partial market by itself, with regards to the development of the last 10 years, seen in 5-year steps, just twice double the number from 2011 to 2016 by 800 million, and afterwards in the next 5 years another the same amount actually. This means we at this point today we can say that the per capita expenses for organic food is roughly 190 euros for organic food in the entire food market. So that means from the 16 billion organic food with more than 80 million people, this results in roughly 200 euro of average for each person living in Germany, of which presently 43 euros are actually spent in natural specialist trade. And in the past, this situation was a different one. Both the growth rates in the entire food market have changed over the 10 years and have doubled actually in organic specialist retail trade. Growth has actually clearly declined, was clearly lower. It has always been relevant, but this growth only accounted for 80%. I mean, the share of organic food retail store is actually declining step by step. In the booming year 2020, the organic food sales increased by 22%, and in retail, in the specialist retail trade, by 2/3. And last year, as already shown by Diana, the LEH and the discounter considerably overtook the organic specialist trade. For many years, for the first time, they had a turnover which actually was a minus. So the development just described in detail, that's these are the roughly 83 euros of overall expenditure, which actually became 190 within a period of 10 times, with the respective share of the specialist organic trade. The development within the specialist organic trade, I've tried to separate it by the development in the retail trade, the blue line, and the development in the wholesale is the orange line, which are quite parallel. But for instance, in the Corona year, 2020, there were clear differences. this is due on the one hand. This is what I would like to make in natural retail trade. These companies are only included in the evaluation if like to like, they have the same space as before with the wholesale data, of course. Everything is included, or first new or first equipment, or actually sales of wholesale to non-retail specialist trade structures is contained. This is the reason why the wholesale tends towards being above the development of the specialist trade. So this actually makes clear the overall sales of organic food in German food market remains a niche until further notice, although political development shows something to the contrary. Altogether, we can see that the organic share is roughly 7%. That's one thing, one point, which is a requirement for the next few years, and also shows how demanding the partially so relaxed word is. So the growth plans with such relaxed wordings can actually impact, and the share of the natural specialist trade in marketing organic food is declining step by step. It's meanwhile at 23%. 10 years ago, these were still far more than 40%. These are the accumulated growth rates for retail trade and for wholesale for these over the last 5 years. And let me just say one more thing, and I'm going to talk about that in the next few slides in more detail. But let me say at this point, the share of the increase in lands in organic retail trade refers to almost unchanged POS. That means roughly 2,500 plus minus. And over the last 8 or 10 years, this has hardly seen any change. The growth dynamic is changing between small and medium sized to major and very big stores. But I'm going to show that in more detail afterwards. Once again, the detailed development of turnover of the previous year is compared to the previous year. So the dark blue bars are the developments. 2021 is compared to the light blue bars, which show the 2020 development, and it becomes very clear what I've already mentioned before, the growth in the previous years prior to 2020 in the medium upper one-digit area continued in the first 2 months 2020, and afterwards with this light blue bar. And then in March 2020, there was Corona, and with panic purchases and all the consequences everybody knows. And as of March 2021, with exactly these explosive initial growth effects, we could make a comparison. And this is the reason why the monthly series of development in organic trade, specialist trade, is the way it is here. And if we actually translate that into quarters, we can also see a development line, the decline. actually developed from they doubled from the second to the third, from the third to the fourth class. We just need to speed up a bit. Thanks a lot for that. And this is how the entire minus was 3.3% came about. So the growth in specialist trade over the last 10 years, I try to illustrate that with an average POS we have from 2011 to 2016, 37.5%, from 2016 to 21, 29.1%. Altogether, 78% of increase in turnover in these 10 years. This is the reason why at the moment it is so important to admit that 2021 in this development, actually there is actually a break. Now, when we only focus on the turnover and the development, I'd like to complete that by economic results, which we had in the first preliminary evaluation for 2021. The gap, that's also in a comparison of 10 years with the 5-year steps. This gap, or the range over the years, has actually slightly improved. So released net trade, the margin has actually improved, and then the overall costs have also continuously increased, not gap, but margin, which is really a deterioration for the result, and the result which actually shows that the Pareto results actually stayed more or less the same level, but relating to clearly stronger sales and turnovers, which means the turnovers increased by 78%, the cost by 93, so net profit, so the result 50%. Actually, it's a success model, but as I said, 2021 signalizes something different. And now, towards the end, 2 slides relating to the structural change within the natural specialist retail. The entire space in 2011 was 460,000 square meters. In the 10 years, it actually increased by 50% to 688,000 square meters. Within the structures, as mentioned before, the share of the big spaces, and here I just wanted to take the companies with industrial branches, and what actually stands out in its development. In 2011, were out of the 460,000 square meters, 200,000 square meters spaces of branches, and 10 years later of actually chains was actually it was actually 65%, which increased. 2/3 of all square meters of organic specialist retails are spaces of large chains. And the federal nationwide chains are shown in the 3rd column. That was 10 years ago, but roughly half of the active chains are dense and alnatura and basic, most of all, and the other chains are either retail and regionally active ones, or they are active in certain cities or quarters. So 50% of chains operating nationwide, and 50% 10 years ago, and 1/3 more than, no, 60%, sorry, 60%. Now we really have to come to an end, sorry. The last slide shows this development in absolute figures, and the overall number of POS in these 10 years, as already mentioned before, was actually 2,500 more or less. The smallest spaces included in the beginning, 10 years ago, more than half of them, and 10 years later, less than 1/3, and the biggest spaces were 15%, accounted for 15% 10 years ago, and they doubled in number to reach 30%, more or less. That's a development which in its dynamics actually slowed down a lot, but in its direction is still ongoing, and this is a further structural topic which the organic specialist trade needs to cope with. So that means the influence, the impact of small owner-run organic specialist trade stores within this area and within the entire food retail trade can remain. See, this is a question which I presently don't dare answering yet. Thanks a lot. Sorry to be a bit longer. Thanks a lot, Klaus Braun, for this insight into the specialist organic retail trade. My colleague, Friedhelm von Mering, in the chat actually already asked a question. Please send the question to presse@dov because it's a kind of TV live program, and we will be taken out, so they will throw us out of the channel very punctually. There's a reason why I would like to point out before we actually change the program that all the industry information will be found at BIOFACH, and the press information will be available in English language as well. You will also find all the national and international information in the press folder. The video on demand will be available to you after the end of the stream as of this afternoon. And all the events which will also exist on the part of the BLV can be found at our website under and I would like to point out the BIOFACH in particular, where we hopefully meet face-to-face, and the Ökofeld days, which will come off in end of June. On the 1st of March, we will have a website live. We will switch live, which means so organic law, easy to understand. Please have a look at that, and we are glad to say that this year we're going to be 20 years, and this is also there are also a couple of things waiting for you at the end. The only thing left to be done is to thank all the speakers, especially for this session. Diana Schad and Klaus Braun would like to thank you very much. And I would like to thank all of you for your attention and for your questions. Wish all of you for 22 very interesting and successful time, full of events in these exciting times, especially for organic topics. And we hope to see you again face-to-face this year. So I would like to give back from the studio in Berlin, Bonn, and I don't know where you are, Klaus, Nürnberg, and I would like to say goodbye to you. Thanks a lot at this point. I would like to take the example of the TV program, and I'm going to be short with regards to all the following programs and speakers. I would like to thank all of you. Also from our part, I'm very happy if you continue watching us, dear participants, and this Congress session. It's really worthwhile continuing to watch us, because afterwards, together with Mirja Eckert, we will follow the new and present of our ideal careers, Cosmos and Nature, with the natural cosmetics. At this point, I would like to thank you very much. So stay with us. See you later.